Hello, greetings and welcome, my dear viewers and listeners. It's been a moment, hasn't it? Apologies for the pause in my schedule. I was preparing to defend my master thesis on university, which took priority over everything else. I managed to defend it, so now I have a degree proving that I am not a complete imbecile. It also means I should have a little bit more time, so we should get back on schedule. More or less. Additionally, if I manage to time everything right, this video is premiering my birthday, so consider it a birthday special as well. As with the previous episode, there will be an additional Q&A episode. You should know the rules by now. 1 question per person, put Q&A on top of a comment to get noticed. I would also like to extend my thanks to a few people. I thank Chaosmancer55 for voicing Yarel Poof in this episode. To Ultrasound7 for donating money to Ko-fi Art Budget Fund, which allows me to plan ahead and commission more art pieces for this story. To EnderAu4 and NG on our Discord server for making a lot of SFM art pieces inspired by this series. Thanks to them, I have something to use when we get to the Clone Wars era. Lastly, I bow my head before none other by Hayden Lumpkin for providing a number of propaganda posters for this series. I encourage everyone to subscribe to the channel and join our Discord server to be part of our growing community. You should be fine as long as you can at least pretend to not be a wild animal. If you can, support me through Patreon or donate money to mentioned before art found on Ko-fi. It's thanks to your donations that this series has its own art gallery. With all that out of the way, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Lina was glued to the glass of a transport, gazing out at the planet-spanning city. A sea of glass, stone and metal stretched far beyond the horizon, spires glittering in the sunlight as if they were forged from gold and silver. She still couldn't get used to the scale of it all. It was hard, no, impossible to comprehend. Of course, she had seen images of hives before, but there was a world of difference between a city the size of a mountain and one that covered an entire planet. Even knowing what she did about the less than pristine lower levels, she couldn't stop gawking. Most of all, she couldn't take her eyes off the structure they were approaching. The Jedi Temple. It had been almost a week since their arrival on Coruscant, and they've been invited to visit shortly after. Unfortunately, other duties kept them busy. The Ethereal had deemed meetings with politicians, industrialists, merchants, and even a few criminal organizations more urgent than an invitation to the psykers of the Elemental Council. The few interactions they had with the Jedi so far took place outside the temple and were usually brief, mostly limited to information exchanges and the ultimatum they had delivered to the Senate on the first day. Now, at last, they were visiting the temple itself. She, Saheras, and here I thought the Jedi Order was all about humility, Dane muttered, staring at the temple alongside her. Lina let out a quiet breath. Unfortunately, her so-called guardian had categorically refused to let her go alone, and so, albeit reluctantly, he'd been invited along. An appropriate structure considering their importance to the Republic. Came a low chuckle from the massive floating form of a Nikasar psyker. If the archives I glimpsed are accurate, they've served as the Republic's protectors for over 1,000 generations. Longer than even the Imperium of Man. Lina swallowed hard. The Imperium of Man was ancient. The millennia of history, most of it remembered only as a myth or scripture, was no small thing. And yet, this Republic had endured even longer. And they still have records from those times? She asked, incredulous. Very few, Sacheras replied with a shrug. And mostly reserved for the archivists. Even the Republic, for all its grandeur, can't keep every record intact. Probably for the best, Dane said thoughtfully. From what I've heard from Silent Tide, the last 1,000 years were relatively uneventful, at least in the grand scheme of things. He glanced at the Nikasar. A millennium of peace and stagnation. Can you imagine such a thing? Not before arriving to this galaxy, no. The Wanderer chuckled, then grew more serious. Though, it is worth noting, the period before the Rusan Reformation resembles our own experiences. Lina wasn't sure what they were talking about, but judging by the conversation, Dane had clearly studied the Republic's history more deeply than he liked to admit. Can't deny that, Dane muttered. From what I saw, the wars against the Sith were brutal. He turned his head as the pilot circled the temple, giving the passengers a view from every angle. But the Jedi won that war, and for the last 1,000 years, they've maintained what passes for peace in this galaxy. A monument in its own right. Sacheras nodded. Almost as grand as their temple. I can't wait to see what's inside, Lina exclaimed, unable to hide her excitement. Control your enthusiasm, girl, Dane said, rolling his eyes. The Jedi might be friendly, but they are neither our friends nor our allies. I know that! I'm not an idiot! She snapped, angered by the implication. Maybe. But you were getting pretty friendly with them before, Dane said, eyeing her with a hint of suspicion. Just remember to keep your mouth in check. Don't go sharing every secret you've picked up. Mira taught me better than that, Lina shot back, eyes narrowing. There it was, a twitch, barely noticeable. A momentary stiffness in Dane's posture at the mention of that name. But it passed in an instant. By the time she blinked, the ex-stormtrooper was once again a mask of cold steel. I believe you, he said after a pause. As much as you are a constant thorn in my side, I doubt even you would be foolish enough to cross her. Lina straightened, trying to look taller. Mira and the others taught me well, she repeated with pride. Indeed, you've mastered the use of your psychic might. They taught you everything. except wisdom," Dane said flatly. "That's why I'm babysitting you." Lina flushed with irritation. "You are exceptionally insufferable today." "I am exceptionally insufferable every day." The transport slowed, approaching one of the landing pads near the temple. Lina spotted a few Jedi already waiting, easily recognizable by their brown robes. They noticed them too. "Skywalker and Kenobi are there," Marek noted. "To the surprise of absolutely no one." He squinted. "Oh, and there is that Gretchen-looking thing." "He is a Grand Master of a Jedi Order," Sahara scolded. "Show him the appropriate respect." "Appropriate to his station or height?" Dane asked, sarcasm dripping from every word. The Nikasar exhaled sharply. "Just try not to cause a scandal, no matter how you feel about them. Making the Jedi our enemies would be very unwise." "I figured as much." They nodded, eyes fixed on the Jedi awaiting them. "They are dangerous. More than they probably realize." "Beyond being an organization uniting thousands of psykers?" Lina asked, rhetorically. Dane grunted. "Yes, beyond that." Lina waited for him to elaborate, but he remained silent, keeping his thoughts to himself. Moments later, the ship landed and the doors opened. They stepped onto the landing pad, greeted by 5 Jedi. Lina smiled when she saw Anakin, who smiled back. Kenobi gave her a small nod. There was also Grandmaster Yoda, sitting in a hovering chair. Next to him was a strange humanoid Jedi with green skin, large deep black eyes, and tentacles growing from his head. Too many for a Twi'lek. The last was... She blinked. A very tall, pale alien with a comically long neck and a disproportionate head. Her distracted thoughts were cut short as Master Yoda spoke. "Welcome," the Jedi Master said. "Awaiting you, we were." "We are honored by your invitation, Master Yoda." Saharas floated forward, taking the lead. "We apologize for the delay. The duties of the Council took priority."
"There is nothing to apologize for,"
the pale alien said calmly, his voice carrying the weight of age.
"We didn't have to wait long. Patience is a virtue."
"Though the young forget it sometimes," the green-skinned alien said with a wide grin, glancing at Anakin. The young man blushed, but kept his composure. The alien chuckled. "Don't worry, Skywalker. You are still just a learner. You will learn patience and time." Anakin smiled and bowed his head. "Thank you, Master Fisto." Kenobi smiled, seemingly satisfied that Anakin kept his cool, then turned to face them. "I believe small introductions are in order."
"That they are."
The tall Jedi nodded.
"I'm Master Uriel Poof, member of the Jedi High Council. A pleasure to meet you all."
"Master Kit Fisto, delighted to make your acquaintance," the green-skinned Jedi added with a friendly smile. "I'm Saharas, known as the Wanderer, a seer and follower of a Tauva goddess. May her light guide us all on the one path to salvation." The psychic Arsine bowed his head. "Lina Voss, combat psyker in service to the Blackthorn dynasty," she said, bowing her head. It's an honor to meet you as well. There was a moment of silence as all eyes turned to Dane, who didn't seem thrilled by this meeting despite insisting on being present. Dane Marek, stormtrooper and witch hunter in service to the Blackthorn dynasty. A pleasure. His voice suggesting anything but pleasure. A shadow crossed Anakin's face as he eyed Dane. Kenobi also clearly wasn't happy about his presence. Yoda and Yaril, however, remained composed. Two sages unmoved by the barely concealed hostility. Kit Fisto, on the other hand, seemed downright delighted. "Ah, so you are the soldier they keep talking about," Fisto said, tilting his head and rubbing his chin as he scrutinized Dane. "I hope I didn't disappoint your expectations," Dane replied in a flat tone. "Oh, no, quite the opposite. You look formidable, and I can sense your strength." Fisto smiled widely. "I'm sure you will enjoy your short visit." "I'm sure you are sure," Dane shot back, clearly unhappy with the friendly demeanor. A tense silence fell as the two warriors sized each other up, one with a wide grin, the other with barely hidden contempt. "Come now," Yoda's voice cut through the silence. "Much to talk about we have." The Wanderer was impressed by the scale and splendor of the temple. As his title suggested, he had traveled far and wide and seen many things. Yet this galaxy continued to surprise him. "Speak with you, we want it," Grand Master Yoda said in a measured tone. "About your galaxy, the Force, and your abilities." "I imagine you would," Sacheras chuckled. "Ask away, Master Jedi." "Shared many things, Knight Secura did," the ancient Jedi said calmly. "Hostile, you said the Great Sea was. Hear more about it, we would like." The Wanderer scrunched his nose. He had expected this question, but didn't want to answer it, not fully at least. He didn't hide his feelings, and it was clear the Jedi sensed his reluctance. "Is it something you can't speak about?" Kenobi asked, his face friendly and reassuring. "No, it's something I shouldn't speak about," the Nikasar answered slowly. "From my experience, if you talk about horrors long enough, they take notice." The Jedi exchanged concerned looks.
Still, we wish to know.
Poof said calmly. Sacheras took a deep breath before speaking. "There is too much to tell that cannot be understood. The Great Sea in this galaxy is calm. There is harmony here. There is light. In my galaxy, the Great Sea was consumed by storms. Water so deep and so dark that it spawned monsters. Entities with a will of their own, not only the desire to spread darkness, but the power to step out of the Great Sea into the real world." The Xeno-psyker said gravely. The Jedi could sense his sincerity and the truth of his words, but could not comprehend it. Not even Yoda, with all his centuries of experience, could grasp the concept of something so terrible. Fast footsteps broke the silence as Dane approached, his eyes burning. "You share too much," he spat. "I share just enough," Sacheras countered. You do know what gives those things power. The former servant of the Holy Inquisition clenched his teeth. We warned them ourselves. We don't know what could have followed us to this galaxy. What guarantee do you have that He stopped himself. That those things didn't follow us? The nature of this galaxy, Sacheras answered smoothly. Understand, I do not, Yoda stated, cutting off Marek's protest. The things I spoke of don't simply live in darkness. They are darkness. Without it, they cannot exist. If you were transported to our galaxy, the force which you trust would be a deadly poison to you, just as the calm, clear sea is deadly to those creatures. Sacheras explained. Even if some manage to enter this reality, they either dissolved in the light or hid in the darkest corners of this galaxy, trapped in places consumed by darkness. The Jedi seemed to relax slightly, but Dane was unconvinced. I admire your enthusiasm. Pooh! He spat on the ground. I fought those things and followers of the dark for too long to believe they could be so easily defeated. That would be true in our galaxy, Dane Marek. But this isn't our galaxy, Sacheras answered smoothly. Things impossible there are possible here. Trust me, and trust my sight. The goddess showed me the truth, and she still guides me on the one path to salvation. The Nikasar pointed at the round medallion hanging from his neck, a symbol of rising sun and a many-armed goddess. Dane stepped forward, eyes blazing with hatred. Spare me your delusions of faith, Sacheras. I've seen the power of the gods and the madness of their followers. Dark gods, light gods, it doesn't matter. There isn't a deity out there worthy of worship. He was almost frothing at the mouth. Speak not to me about the many-armed goddess, for she is like all the others. Parasites, all of them. Sacheras remained calm, though he caught a surprised look on Lina's face. She didn't know. Unsurprising. Dane wouldn't share those thoughts with her, even if she asked. Even the Emperor? Sacheras prompted. Dane looked like he was moments from ripping Sacheras apart with his bare hands. The corpse sitting on the golden throne is as rotten as his Imperium. Whatever he once represented is now nothing but dust. His voice was sharper than any blade, his hatred so intense that Sacheras feared it could cut through his own mind if he dared to touch it. I've fought those things too long to believe they bring salvation to anyone. There is no hope to be found in the great sea you keep talking about. There is always hope, Sacheras countered, especially in those new, clean waters. Blah! Delude yourself all you want, psyker. Marek spat on the floor in anger. Trusting the warp leads to nothing but tragedy and death. And when it corrupts you, I hope I will be the one to end your miserable life. Sacheras endured Dane's burning gaze until the stormtrooper turned and moved to the back of the group, clearly done with this nonsense. The Nikasar kept his eyes on him for a moment longer before letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That rage, Kit Fisto whispered, his grin gone. What could inspire something like that? Decades of experience. Kenobi said quietly. He did say he served that Inquisition for over 50 years, Master Fisto. Whatever he endured then dictates how he feels now. He has every reason to hate, the Wanderer said sadly. He's seen too much, and the path he walked is lost to him. Worrying his state is, Yoda said quietly. Your ally, sure he is. For now, at least, Sacheras answered slowly. Do not blame him for his outburst. He was once a fanatical soldier, only to discover his faith was a lie. He despises me for finding my path in faith.
That seems short-sighted,
Poof said calmly, glancing at Dane, who had moved a fair distance away, clearly signaling he didn't want to be part of a conversation.
Holding on to the past is dangerous.
Men like Dane do not forgive, and they do not forget, especially themselves. The Wanderer let out a quiet breath. He has a good reason to be this way, Lina added, stepping briefly away from Anakin. The Force is known as a warp in our galaxy for a reason. Because that's what it does. It warps minds, souls, and bodies. She shook her head. I do not know exactly what he fought, but I know what I experienced, how my training looked, how I was prepared to face the dangers of a warp. She looked at the Jedi. I've become far stronger since coming to your galaxy. My powers aren't as unstable as before, not as dangerous. Honestly, I envy you. You have no idea how easy using the Force really is. Easy? Anakin asked, taken aback. It takes years to master even basic abilities, he protested. True, but when you use the Force, there is no threat that something will rip you apart, she answered, her tone growing colder. From the inside. What are you talking about? Anakin shook his head as if she had gone mad. Such things don't happen. She tensed for a moment. It happened to my family. A stunned silence followed. Anakin went a little pale. What? Lina looked him in the eyes, tears streaking down her cheeks, her jaw clenched tight. She took a deep breath and moved past him at a quick pace. Anakin looked to the Overmasters, then rushed after her. Lina, wait! The Jedi Masters and Nikasar watched as they moved away. In the corner of his eye, Wanderer noticed that Dane moved closer, making sure to never be too far from his charge. Poof slowly turned to Sacheras, an unspoken question touching his mind. The girl speaks the truth. Using the power of a warp is dangerous. And the things of the dark take notice when you use that power. They are predators. They hunt for sensitives. They feed on us, and many times they kill us. He explained. Training and special protections are needed to keep yourself safe. I can't see her story. Too far from her home and too deep in the shadows. But I can guess. Great sadness in her, I feel, Yoda said after a moment. Fear and hate, paths to the dark side they are. Fear she may fall, do you not? No. Sacheras answered. What she hates is the Force itself. Her training serves her well. She still sees it as a venomous viper, hard to control and ready to kill her. As long as she remembers her training, she won't fall. That way of thinking is anathema to the Jedi, Kenobi said, shaking his head.
The Force is our ally.
Yarel Poof said with the confidence of a true Jedi Master. The Nikasar looked at the Jedi with a critical eye. Then, the moment it betrays you will be so much more devastating. Anakin caught up to her, but she was too angry to talk. She deluded herself, she knew. At first she'd been glad there were psykers in this galaxy who were not only friendly, but respected by the society. But she was wrong. Force users weren't psykers. Not exactly. Their powers came from similar source, yet they were completely different. Their abilities, their experience, worlds apart. How could a Force user in this galaxy comprehend the dangers of demon possession, the constant temptation, the whispers from beyond the veil? They simply couldn't. Their lives were too easy, so easy they couldn't even begin to understand how easy their lives really were. Lina, listen, I'm sorry, Anakin said, his voice soft. I didn't know. Spare me your pity, she growled, still burning with anger. I don't need it. I shouldn't have been so insensitive. The young Padawan continued, desperate for forgiveness. Please, forgive me. For what? Being an ignorant fool? She spat, speeding up. She needed space, but Anakin kept pace. Their argument hadn't gone unnoticed by the other Jedi, especially the Padawans. It wasn't every day you saw the Chosen One chasing after some unknown girl. Fed up with his constant apologies and annoyed he kept up, Lina suddenly stopped and spun to face him. She stomped the ground hard, a thunderclap echoing through the temple halls. Biological lightning crackled between her fingers as her eyes flared with raw power. That finally took effect. Anakin froze, eyes wide in shock. From afar, Lina heard gasps and whispers. Even temple guards shifted, ready to intervene. Dane, who kept his distance, looked uncharacteristically composed. But she barely noticed. Her subconscious mind picked up the tension, but her conscious mind was consumed by pain and rage. You know nothing, Anakin Skywalker, she spat. What could a Jedi living safe inside a temple like this possibly know about the horrors psykers like me endure? There was a long pause. Lina was sure she had finally silenced him, but to her surprise, Anakin spoke. I was a slave, he said quietly, before I joined the Order. Her anger faltered, like a storm meeting still air. She hadn't known. The lightning that cackled between her fingers fizzled out as she reined in her emotions. She cursed herself for jumping to conclusions. There is more than one way to struggle in life than just being a psyker. Where? She asked, her voice subdued. He answered, Not that far, I guess, from where the Tau Empire ended up. When did you join the Order? 5 years ago. That stopped her. She was no expert in gouging power, but she felt his strength. It radiated from him like heat. If he had reached this level of power in just 5 years... She pushed the thought aside. "Family? Do you still have family?" she asked. Kind of?" Anakin looked uncertain. "I have a mother. She is still on Tatooine, but Jedi aren't allowed attachments. Not even to family." Rina's jaw tightened. Her fury shifted, now aimed at the Jedi Order. That rule, it was cruel. To demand a child abandon their mother in the name of discipline? She took a breath, steadying herself. "My whole family is dead," she said quietly. "I'm the last of Clan Voss." There was a pause. "Do you think Force sensitivity is a gift?" she asked. Anakin nodded slowly. "A lot of people think it is, but it's also a great responsibility. In our galaxy, it's a curse," she whispered. "I thought it was a gift once, but then..." Her voice faltered. "There was a marriage," she continued. "My older brother, he was marrying into another bloodline, strong in the gift. My uncle came to the ceremony with presents, but it wasn't my uncle." Anakin said nothing, letting her speak. "Something had eaten him, hollowed him out, wore his skin like a cloak, his face like a mask. It mimicked his voice, his scent, even his memories. And then..." Her breath hitched. "It dropped the disguise in the middle of a celebration." Her fist clenched, lightning surging from her body again and striking the stone floor with a sharp crack. The smell of scorched rock filled the air. She opened her eyes and saw Anakin had taken a step back. Black scorch marks pitted the ground around her. Jedi in the distance had stopped what they were doing. Some watched in silence, others whispered. Temple guards now stood more alert, hands near their weapons. She finally noticed Dane. He stood there, a rock statue. She couldn't remember when she saw that look in his eyes. She turned away quickly, ashamed. "I shouldn't have said anything," she thought. "This isn't something they should know. I shouldn't lose my control like that." Below them, the training area bustled with activity. Jedi initiates and Padawans sparred, not against each other, but against various training droids. Some, sphere-shaped, floated above the ground, splitting plasma bolts in rapid bursts. Others were humanoid, wielding lightsaber-like blades. And a few were towering machines, bristling with limbs and weapons, clearly built for more advanced students. She turned and spotted Sakara standing nearby, flanked by the Jedi Masters. They hadn't moved far from where Anakin now stood, still visibly shaken. Rina let out a quiet breath and pointed towards the arena below. "Can we go there?" she asked. Her request seemed to catch most of them off guard, all except the Wanderer and Dane. Master Yoda floated towards her on his hover chair, concern written across his ancient features. Concern not for a Jedi, but for a hurting soul. She managed a faint smile, recognizing the unspoken question in his gaze. "I need to let off some steam," she said. "Combat helps me focus, helps me breathe." Yoda studied her for a moment longer, before nodding solemnly. A problem it is not. The training arena, use it, you may. Thank you, Master Yoda, she said, bowing her head slightly. The stillness was starting to wear on me anyway. She turned, then paused. I hope you don't mind if I go all out. It's been a while. The Jedi exchanged glances, their silent conversation flashing across the Force, weighing risks, damage potential, and the insight they might gain. When the moment passed, Kit Fisto spoke. I don't think it will be a problem, he said diplomatically, assuming your guardian has no objections. All eyes turned to Dane Marek. He didn't look thrilled by the idea, but he wasn't opposed either. There was understanding in his expression, not softness, but recognition. He had known her before the Jedi, before the calmer days. He had seen what she endured, and he knew what she needed. Might as well, he said, stepping forward. It's been over 2 weeks since you had proper arena combat training. He eyed her. You have your gear? Lina reached into the small satchel at her side and pulled out 2 black gauntlets, and then a coiled whip. Anakin's eyes widened, whispers rippled through the watching Jedi. A few temple guards took notice, but Lina didn't care, and neither did Dane. His eyes scanned the whip, then gave a firm, approving nod. Good, get ready, he said before turning to the Jedi. And don't go easy on her. I want to make sure she hadn't gone soft. Kit Fisto grinned. I'm sure our training droids will give her a run for her money. They better, Dane said, his hand dropping to the hilt of his sword. If they don't, I will take her on myself. Silence followed. Tension hummed like a taut wire. The Jedi Masters looked between one another. A single glance here, a subtle nod there, carrying full conversations without a word. Understanding passed among them. Today, they wouldn't just observe a warrior from another galaxy. They would learn from her. A growing crowd gathered around the arena. Younglings, Padawans, knights, and even masters lined the balconies and platforms with barely restrained curiosity. It wasn't every day another type of Force user, especially one from another galaxy, demonstrated their power in combat. But beneath that curiosity, there was a tension, a ripple in the Force. Despite her evident talent, Lina Vos struggled with control of her power, of her grief, and of her rage. It clung to her like a storm cloud. Sacheras could taste the bitterness it left in the psychic tide.
Will you take to the arena as well?
Master Yarel Poof asked, turning his long neck towards Sacheras. Don't bother asking. Dane cut in sharply before Sacheras could answer. Nikasar are pacifists. Never even heard of one lifting a finger in battle. Master Poof raised a brow.
Is that true?
It is for most of my kind, Sacheras replied calmly. Very few use our gifts for violence. It goes against our traditions. And besides, he turned his eyes back to the arena. You won't need another demonstration of psykers' capabilities today. Young Vos is far more skilled in battle than I am. even with your gifts of foresight? Kit Fisto asked, watching Lina's every movement. The future is fluid, Sacheras said. The tides of fate shift like waves in the storm. One can learn to navigate, but dive too deep and you drown before realizing it. In the arena, Lina stood tall. Her black gauntlets covered her hands like armored fist of judgment. A coil whip and sidearm rested at her belt, though she reached for neither. Sacheras knew she carried backup weapons as well. Knives, grenades, perhaps even psychic wards, but she wouldn't need them. Master Yoda floated down and stepped off his hover chair. With a firm tap of his cane against the ground, a training droid advanced. It was armed with a baton-like weapon, a safe but painful alternative to a lightsaber. Its purple energy field designed for teaching Padawans defense and precision. A second tap from Yoda and an energy barrier rose around the arena, a protective measure especially with a live weapon holstered on the girl's hip. The droid assumed its stance, blade extended. Lina didn't draw a weapon. She simply curled her fists, taking a grounded stance. It wasn't elegant. No Jedi forms, no stylized posture. She looked like she wanted to punch the machine into scrap. Murmurs fluttered through the crowd, but no one objected. The third strike from Yoda's cane came, and the droid launched. In a heartbeat, Lina's eyes flared with light, her gauntlets pulsed with energy, bright arcs crawling across the metal. The droid struck first, a clean, textbook thrust. Lina didn't dodge. She caught the blade on her forearm. Sparks exploded in all directions. The energy in her gauntlets absorbed the blow like it was nothing. Two more strikes followed, blocked. A third she deflected with a twist of her wrist, turning the weapon aside. Then she countered. A single punch. A booming crack echoed through the arena like a distant thunder. The droid was launched off its feet, crashing to the ground in a dented heap. Well, would you look at that? Kit Fisto said, clearly impressed. Last time I saw something like that was when Master Windu trained without his saber. I remember, Kenobi said, eyes narrowing in study. She's using something similar to Terraskasi, though the moveset is different. Lina moved in, fists glowing, no hesitation. Every strike that followed slammed into the droid with explosive force. Sparks danced across the field with each hit. The droid struggled to respond, its limbs lagging, metal shell buckling under the assault.
She's using the Force to amplify her strikes.
Poof observed.
But her gauntlets, there's something special about them.
Of course there is, Dane said flatly, turning to the Jedi Master like he just asked whenever space was real. What, you never seen a foci before? Several nearby Jedi exchanged uncertain glances. I'm afraid I don't know what you are talking about, Kenobi admitted, frowning at the term. A what? Dane blinked, stunned for a moment. Then he muttered under his breath, Per fronum testor, before dragging a hand down his face in frustration. You really don't know what a foci is. You know, the tool that helps psykers to focus and concentrate their power while mitigating risks. Seeing continuous confused looks, he hit himself with an open palm. Yes, of course. You idiots never faced the threats of a warp, so of course you don't use foci. Why would you? You didn't even think that something like that would be useful. Psykers inhaled softly through his nose, a silent plea for restraint. But Dane's scorn was already out there, raw and sharp. To ease the tension, Venika's arm calmly reached for the necklace resting on his chest. He lifted a carved medallion, smooth bone etched with ancient script, glowing faintly under the sun. "This is my foci," he said, "a traditional talisman of my people. This one was carved from the bones of my grandfather." There was a collective pause. "Bones of your grandfather?" Anakin yelped, his voice rising in sheer disbelief. Psykers smiled, serene as ever. "Yes, foci must be made of psychically resonant material. Bone from a powerful psyker carries legacy, memory, essence. It's not a disrespect, it's a gift, a continuation." He looked back towards the arena, his eyes narrowing fondly. "They take many forms: amulets, staffs, rune stones. For young Lina, it's those gauntlets." On cue, a loud metallic crunch echoed across the training floor. The droid staggered, its chassis cracked, armor bent in multiple places, servos stuttering. Lina had been toying with it, letting it fight, letting it hope. That mercy ended. With a fluid speed, she ducked a vertical strike, stepped in close, grabbed the droid's extended arm, and ripped it off in a single motion. Sparks flew, wires snapped like tendons, and the crowd gasped. "Quite a unique foci." A murmur passed through the crowd as Yoda tapped his cane once more, and the arena's energy shield flickered and dropped. Lina glanced around, then casually extended the severed droid arm towards its owner. The machine reached for it, taking the limb with a reel of servos. It tried to speak, but its voice box had taken too much damage. Only a garbled crackle escaped its metal face. "Can you give me a real challenge this time?" Lina asked, turning to Master Yoda. "That was barely a warm-up." Dane chuckled. "She is fired up. Good. She hadn't gone soft." "She is an impressive fighter," Kenobi admitted openly. "Those droids aren't easy to take down. I know only a handful of Jedi who could do it unarmed." "Or maybe your droids aren't as tough as you thought." Dane replied with a smirk. "Let's hope you can give her a proper challenge." "Don't worry about that." Kit Fisto grinned, gesturing to the arena as several more droids strode forward. "This next round might actually push her." Psykers turned back to the training ground. This time it looked more serious. 5 droids entered the ring. 3 were humanoid, each armed with a different lightsaber-style weapon. 1 held a single sword, 1 dual-wielded, and the 3rd wielded a staff crackling with energy at both ends. The remaining 2 resembled mechanical arachnids, bristling with ranged weaponry, likely blaster analogues. A mix of melee and ranged opponents. They nodded approvingly. "Good. That should test her properly. You seem to relish putting her through constant trials," Kenobi said, eyes narrowing slightly. "Aren't you ever concerned for her?" "I'd worry if she were in real danger, or if I cared about her well-being," Dane said flatly, cutting Kenobi off with a dismissive wave. just as the energy shield hummed back to life. "Your indifference is truly inspiring," Kenobi replied, his voice thick with sarcasm. Dane barely glanced at him. "Listen to me, Bright Eyes. I've lived nearly a century, and I've yet to see even 4 straight years of peace. War finds people like us, or we find it. And in war, people die. I saw angels of death taken out by a lucky shot, without a preamble." He turned to look at Lina once more. "She will die in battle. So will I. Not even getting transported to this new galaxy will change that." A soft thud of Yoda's cane echoed, and the shield sealed them in once more. The droids moved into position. This time, Lina was serious. She drew her whip, long and dark green, braided like a thorned vine. And then her pistol. Sacheraz immediately recognized the weapon's design. It wasn't of this galaxy. Others, especially young Anakin, stared with interest. Those familiar with local firearms could tell right away this wasn't a blaster. Something about it was wrong, or maybe just alien. Yoda struck the ground again, and thunder rolled through the Jedi Temple. It happened so fast, many Jedi missed it entirely. Those who didn't were stunned into silence. The pistol discharged, not with a sharp pew of a blaster, but with deep thumb as it unleashed a beam of superheated light. It struck the first spider droid dead on, melting a chunk of armor and tearing off one of its blaster limbs. Sparks exploded from the wound, and the machine staggered, crippled, but not destroyed. But it wasn't the gun that shook the temple. It was the whip. Lina leashed it forward, faster than most eyes could follow. Her power surged into the thorn vine weapon, which struck the second spider droid with a sound like a lightning-made solid. Sacheraz saw it clearly. A pulse of raw psychic force flowed from her gauntlets through the whip and into the droid, transforming into a thunderstrike that shattered the machine into a dozen smoking pieces. The stone beneath it was scorched black. Sacheraz allowed himself a small moment of appreciation. The Blackthorns knew how to arm their psykers. The whip, like her gauntlets, was a foci, a powerful one, tuned to her mind, her energy, her rage. He wondered what it was made of, what materials had been used, what runes, what soul-bound techniques. Whoever had forged it was a master of the craft. But there was no time for further thought. The remaining 4 droids, undeterred by their fallen, charged. Lina grimaced. She hadn't been satisfied with that first exchange. Without hesitation, she shifted her aim, firing a quick shot at the dual-wielding droid, while simultaneously lashing her whip to her right, targeting the single-blade unit as it charged. The laser struck true, square in the dual-wielder's face, punching clean through its head. It collapsed instantly, its systems shorting in sprays of sparks. As quick as it had been, the training droid wasn't built to dodge light-based weapons. The single-blade droid wasn't found wanting. It vaulted clean over the whip, evading the strike entirely. Now the situation turned against her. The single-blade droid was dropping from above. The spider droid had recovered and was charging its blaster, and the staff-wielding droid was closing in fast. Lina leapt back and to the side, holstering her pistol and coiling her whip close. Her opponent's strikes missed by inches, but they didn't relent. They advanced with mechanical precision, silent and unstoppable. Mid-run, Lina jumped again, spinning mid-air like a dancer. She poured power into the whip and into her free hand. As she completed the turn, she unleashed both strikes at once. A bolt of biological lightning arced from her fingertips, cracking through the air and smashing into the spider droid. Its systems shrieked in alarm as servos sparked and joints locked, but it somehow stayed standing, damaged but not destroyed. At the same time, Lina's whip leashed forward, not at the droids directly, but at the ground beneath their feet. A thunderous detonation erupted as psychic force struck the stone. The impact shattered a large slab of the floor, sending shards of debris and a wave of concussive force in all directions. Both droids tried to dodge, but the blast radius was too wide. The single blade unit stumbled, one leg dragging and twitching from a damaged joint. The staff wielder right arm sparked. The servos inside jumped from flying shrapnel. Before either could fully recover, Lina drew her pistol again and opened fire. Full auto. Bolts of burning light tore into two droids. Sparks flew, metal melted, and in moments both collapsed in ruined heaps. The pistol clicked dry, its barrel glowing a dull, angry red. Smoke curled from the fallen machines. Silence hung over the arena for just a moment, thick, heavy, reverent. Lina turned towards the spider droid, which twitched and sparked as it struggled to stand. She walked toward it slowly, whip pinned to her side, red-hot pistol still in her hand. For a moment, she stood over the machine, watching it writhe in mechanical confusion. Then, without a word, she raised her fist and brought it down hard. The metal cracked. Silence. A stunned hush settled over the arena, and then, breaking it, clap, clap, clap. Dane Marek, of all people, was clapping. "Nicely done, kid," he said as the energy field surrounding the arena faded. "Good plan, decent execution. You didn't lose your nerve and you adapted to unforeseen complications." Lina let out a frustrated breath, still eyeing the ruined droid. The spider droids were tougher than I expected, she muttered, raising the still glowing pistol. "I thought the hotshot would be more effective." "So did I," Dane said, studying the smoking wreckage. "What would you change?" She didn't hesitate. "I'd rather have a hell pistol. Higher energy output, better penetration. One shot would have dropped the second spider droid." "Good." Dane nodded. "And that second whip strike? Anything you'd do differently?" I'd try wrapping the whip around the single blade droid, fry it, and then throw it into the staff wielder," she said, rubbing her chin thoughtfully. "But that's risky. I'm still not good enough with control at that range." "You chose the safer, more reliable option," Dane agreed. "Still, you could have turned the whip strike into a wave pattern, force both droids to jump instead of just one." "That would have weakened the strike," Lina pointed out. "Maybe," Dane conceded, then gave her a pointed smile. "But 2 potential hits are better than 1. One you missed, might I add." Lina considered it, then nodded. She climbed the arena steps to join him, her expression calmer now, more grounded. The Jedi had remained quiet through the exchange, watching, listening. This wasn't what they had expected. They came to witness a duel, an elegant display of form, technique, and the art of controlled combat. What Lina gave them instead was raw brutality. Not out of malice, not to make a statement. It was simply how she had been trained. She was a combat psyker, molded for war. Her style wasn't to entertain or impress, nor to disarm her opponents like the Jedi did. It was to fight, to kill, and, if need be, to die on the battlefield. There was no room for flair in the heat of battle. Precision, efficiency, overwhelming force, these mattered more than finesse. Not that she didn't have it, but it was buried beneath the brutal effectiveness of her blows and the firepower she chose to wield. Especially her hotshot las pistol. Among the Jedi, ranged weapons were often viewed as crude, tools of soldiers, not warriors of the Force. But psykers didn't share that arrogance. Sacheras watched, quietly analyzing the shift in perception around them, then flinched. A sudden spike of pain lanced through his head. He winced, clutching his temple, eyes clapping shut as the world around him blurred. Something was wrong. No, something was moving. The great sea stirred. He could feel it, a shift in the tides of fate, so vast and so violent, it twisted the currents of destiny around it. The lines of the future moaned under pressure, strained and fraying like overstretched cords. A vision pierced his mind, sharp and surreal. He saw the crimson lizard standing on the shell of a great snail before it jumped on the green jewel with its mouth wide open with hunger. But that vision was overshadowed by something else. The sea heaved, gripped by a sudden storm. Currents collapsed into one another, fusing dozens of timelines into a singular, blinding convergence. A Shadowpoint. A moment in time where paths collided and fate itself fractured. Images rushed through his mind like lightning. Monsters, both old and new, waging war across the stars. The flag of a Tau Empire flying above 10,000 conquered worlds. A war erupting far too soon, setting the galaxy aflame. A Jedi Knight wielding a dueling saber, facing down a colossus of metal and flesh, his blade flickering between blue and red, pulsing like a heartbeat. A burning city rising from the middle of the sea, its flames seen for light years. White-clad warriors cut down before they could lift their blades. And laughter, demented, unhinged laughter, cut short by a roar so deep, so ancient, it seemed to rise from the bones of creation itself. Each vision, each fragment, was a possible future, each twisted and bent towards a single, inescapable moment. All paths now spiraled towards a Shadowpoint. And whatever happened there would decide everything. Sacheras gasped as he snapped back, eyes fluttering open. It took him a moment to realize Lina was gently shaking him. "Wanderer, Are you with us? The concerned voice of a human girl finally pierced through the fog. He blinked, taking in his surroundings. The Jedi were watching him intently. Clearly they had felt the shift, though he doubted any had glimpsed what he saw or comprehended its meaning. How long was I under the waves? He asked after a few steadying breaths. 4 minutes, Dane replied, checking his chrono. Vision, I'm guessing? Yes, a potent one at that. Psykers replied slowly, rubbing his chin. I will need time to meditate, and then speak with Seeker Lifesight. Things are moving now, and I fear they cannot be stopped. Not anymore.
For good or ill?
Master Poof tilted his head, curiosity in his voice. Psykers made an uncertain sound and shook his head. I do not know. I saw too much. I need time to gather my thoughts. Dane glanced at Lina, who shook her head. She wasn't an oracle. She only knew something had happened, but not what. The Jedi, on the other hand, seemed genuinely troubled. Their connection to the Great Sea was deeper than most psykers he'd known, yet they remained blind to what he had seen. For whatever reason, their foresight was limited. He felt a strange mixture of pity and envy for their ignorance. Reaching up, he touched the bone medallion around his neck, whispering a prayer to his goddess. Tauva, guide me along the one path to salvation. He begged silently. He couldn't be certain if his goddess had followed him to this new galaxy, or if she was strong enough to answer his call. Ravax the Red grunted in annoyance at the small flashing light on his gauntlet. Raising from his throne, he ignored the flicker of fear in the eyes of his Twi'lek slaves as he strode towards his personal chambers. Massive, even by Trandoshan standards, his body was all muscle. But it wasn't his bulk or strength that made him unique. It was his color. His scales were a deep, unbroken crimson. A rare mutation many saw as a weakness. After all, how could one hope to camouflage when shining like a red star? Ravax had turned that supposed weakness into a symbol of his brutal infamy, overwhelming foes with sheer strength and relentless savagery. Passing through the corridors, he sensed the tension simmering within his crew, the restless energy common before the hunt. Yet this one was different. There was new prey, the Tau, an upstart species from a distant galaxy, foolish enough to think themselves formidable. A guttural chuckle rumbled through Ravax's throat. Fools! In this galaxy, everything was prey. From the manufactories of Sulust, the shipyards of Sulis Van, the convoys of Rodia, the cities of Ord Mantell, to the muddy plains of Jabim. He had raided, pillaged, and slain across the stars for over 2 decades. Many had tried to stop him. All had failed. He even had a lightsaber in his collection to prove it. Reaching his quarters, he sealed the doors behind him. Walking over to a console, he pressed a series of buttons, establishing a secure encrypted connection before finally hitting the send command. A hologram flickered to life before Ravax, projecting the bloated figure of Zero the Hutt. The Trandoshan scrunched his nose at the sight of the slug. "What do you want, Zero?" he growled. "You need to accelerate your preparations." Zero's voice was tense. "The Tau are moving faster and bolder than I expected. They need to be put to heel, and it must happen soon." Ravax raised a scaly eyebrow. "What's the rush, slug? My fleet is nearly ready. I'm only waiting on a few allies to join this little raid you proposed." Zero's agitation was clear. "There is no time. Those blueskins are planning something big. You must strike now." Ravax's tail flickered impatiently. He hated being ordered around. "What will cost you, Hutt?" Zero's eyes gleamed with calculated offer. "I will give you the location of 2 more ships to add to your fleet, plus a cache of old combat droids." "How many?" 500 droids. Mostly old and High Republic models. Old but still operational. A detailed list appeared beside the hologram. Ravax scanned the inventory. Between the light cruiser, freighter, and small armored vehicle unit already promised, this was a significant force. Enough to pique his interest. "That's a generous offer," Ravax sneered. "But I'm worried it's a trap. Don't play honorable, Hutt. I know how you work." Zero clenched his jaw, then relented. "If you must know, the Tau have made contact with the Black Sun. I don't have the details yet, but whatever it is, it must be stopped." Ravax paused, fingers tracing a scar on his face, an old souvenir from a fallen prince. A bloodthirsty grin split his maw. "That all you had to say, Zero?" He chuckled darkly. "Expect news of devastation soon." Without waiting for a response, he ended the transmission and strode to the bridge. He keyed his comlink to his lieutenants and captains. "We accelerate departure," he barked. "Everyone ready in 8 hours. Inform Governor Kong. We will leave within 12. The bridge buzzed with urgent activity around him. "Soon we shall have new slaves to sell." Ravax stood on the bridge of his flagship, eyes cold as he gazed upon his fleet, ready to unleash chaos. The Emissary-class Republic cruiser was a relic of High Republic era, originally more a work of art than a warship. Now it had been carefully modified and rebuilt into a Pirate King's flagship. Marrow Drinker. Its elegant spires were replaced with turrets, and the proud symbols of a republic were swapped for skulls and bones of great monsters. The 900-meter-long behemoth was a fitting command ship for Ravax's pirate fleet. Flanking it were 2 Captor-class heavy munition cruisers, carrying the bulk of his starfighters. 2 Diamond-class cruisers held a sizable portion of his ground forces. Munifex-class cruisers, several Hammerhead corvettes, and a variety of other warships of all shapes and sizes completed the armada. A war fleet formidable enough to keep judiciary forces at bay. These were Ravak's rivers. His rivers. Terror unleashed across the Outer Rim. But this raid would be different. This one would be remembered. It would teach the upstart Tau a brutal lesson. Who truly rules these stars? Such were Ravak's thoughts as a gleeful fire burned in his chest. He was blind to the curling, crashing strings of fate tightening around his choices. Oh, how he would scream in terror if he could glimpse the chaos his bloodlust would unleash. But for now, he chuckled, blissfully ignorant of a storm to come. Perhaps it was a small mercy from the universe that he would not live to see the consequences of his own actions.